AM Neighborhood Restoration Beautification Commission. We'll start with call to order. I guess I will do that. Mary's gone. Mary Kay.
Here.
Here.
Kathy here.
Here.
Jermaine here. Lucas here. Jess absent. Okay. Next item, public comment on agenda related items. There's no public here. Approval of agenda.
I'll approve that.
Second.
Okay. Motion from second from Kathy. And voice vote, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Approval of the meeting minutes from October 2nd meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, voice vote, aye.
Aye.
Okay, unfinished business, ordinance review, chapter 415. So this is open storage of disabled, inoperable, junked, and abandoned motor vehicles. So I guess we'll just, the way that we should do this is kind of just go through it, like bullet by bullet. And then just let me know if you have any comments as we go. So definitions 415. Is there any comments on that? Okay, 415.02, no person shall permit. One thing that I had on this one, I wasn't sure, what is the, and this all goes back to blight enforcement, I think, but what's the procedure for ticketing on this specific thing?
Usually officers go and talk to them and tell them to move their vehicle. If they don't, we give them a ticket.
They don't give them a ticket, you said?
They do give them a
Oh, they
ticket.
do. And what's-
So what it used to, the procedure used to be, 10, 15 years ago, is we would go on private property and slap an orange sticker saying, remove this in 7 days or we will. And if they didn't remove it in 7 days, we would go onto private property and remove that. And so, both the city attorney and I, agree that, there needs to be a due process before you deprive someone of their private property. And so for us to move someone's car off their private property, we have to get a court order to do such. Typically, when we give them a ticket, they typically move it. So, and our enforcement philosophy is if it's not in the public eye, then we don't prioritize it. There's enough things that we need to prioritize that are in the public eye, but if it's in someone's backyard with a privacy fence, it's very difficult for us to prioritize that over something that's just, more impactful in the community.
So
This is private property only.
you said that an officer identifies that and then immediately, once they make contact, a ticket is written if it's not moved, right?
We give them 7 days.
Okay, that's what I was gonna question if we needed to.
And oftentimes we give them more than 7 days if we think they're moving in the right direction.
Okay, so it's kind of communication for that first 7 days if they can, and then, okay. I was just wondering if we needed to remove that as all, so. Any other comments on O2?
Don't have any.
Okay. I guess before we move on, is there any way to make that better? Because obviously this is directly related to blight enforcement. So do you think that there's anything that we could recommend to council on this one, Josh? To change that policy
I
or
don't,
anything,
otherwise I
or-
would have made the recommendation by
Okay,
now.
I just-
So, looking for input from people, commissioners. Yeah, I don't see, while, having to get a court order to remove a car on private property is a lot more labor intensive, is more consistent with the Constitution. So the way we did things, I didn't agree with. If we go on your property and take your car without due process, I had issues with that, and I discussed that when I was day one as police chief, and I think our process is a little more, is more consistent with our Constitution.
All right, moving on. 415.03, failure to remove. Anything on that?
Didn't have anything.
Okay, 04, where prohibited. Okay. Then penalties. Nothing.
So, yeah, so this covers, but where prohibited, it talks about storage, repair, and servicing of disabled, inoperable junk vehicles not authorized herein, tearing down. So it talks about, you know, if you're fixing a car in your driveway type situation, in my mind.
Yeah. Okey-doke. Moving on. All right, chapter 654, nuisances. Chief, a second to pull that up.
You don't have to wait for me, it's all right.
Okay. 65401, public nuisance defined. Not seeing any.
Um,
You got one?
so I just have a question. Let's see what I highlighted here. The term public nuisance shall include but not limited to whatever is declared to be a nuisance and is prohibited by any provision of these ordinances. So doesn't that fall under the blight? Because we have a different blight ordinance. I'm just wondering.
So what's commonly referred to blight is really an amalgamation of a bunch of ordinances, as you've seen, junk vehicles, nuisances, so when we say blight, we hear people blight, and people say, well, there's no real definition of blight. Well, there is. You just have to read the ordinances. So this is probably a broader interpretation for something that might not be blight related, but it still might be a nuisance. That's my understanding.
So where is that line drawn? Because you might call it blight and I call it a nuisance. What, I don't,
Oh, I think you just work together to figure out which ordinance it best fits.
Is a nuisance a person or something in your yard?
Well, I don't think you can, there's other avenues for declaring someone a public nuisance, so
Okay.
I don't think it would, yeah.
I define blight as something that if it offends the neighbors, it's blight.
Sounds more like a nuisance.
I think you have to be careful with offense because it's a very subjective. So let me give you an example. And again, I'm not arguing with you, but I'm going to give you an example. So let's say I have a sign in my yard that says the NRBC sucks. And you say that offends me. Well, that is your absolutely First Amendment protected right to have that sign in your yard. Well, city council doesn't have the authority, nor does the government, meaning the city attorney or the judge, have the ability to take that and deem that a nuisance. So I think you gotta be careful with the word offends. But whoever is alleging that something is a nuisance has to provide proof. So in my mind, let's say that you have a drug house in your community where there's known that drugs are being sold at that house. You could articulate an argument that could be a public nuisance because it injures, endangers public, renders dangerous of any street, alley, things like that. So there's different ways, but again, it's on behalf of the government who needs to prove this fact. And it can't just say, well, in my opinion, I don't know if that would be appropriate.
Or I always thought of it this way too, and I don't know if this would be correct. If everybody did what they were doing, the whole town would be a mess. So why let one person do it? If 20 people did it, it would be chaos. Is that a nuisance? I mean, if I went to Wesco and bought coffee and then hung every coffee thing in my yard on the trees, and then everybody started doing that, wouldn't that be kind of crazy?
But is that your right because it's your property?
Well, yeah, but who would come to this town? They'd say they're
So so in that specific example, you would say that,
It just sounds a little bit opinionated, but whether or not it was
Yeah.
great or not, it's still an opinion. And I guess we're kind of talking about public nuisance, so like if we read this, the definition of it, it means whatever annoys, injures, or endangers the safety, health, and comfort or repose of the public, offends public decency, interferes with, or obstructs or renders dangerous any street, alley, highway, river, or stream, or in any way renders the public insecure in life or property. So I think the Chief's definitely explained this to us a lot about something is blight or if it's ugly. And from what we've learned, ugly can't be enforced as blight.
yeah, so, and again, we say blight ordinance, but there's actually a lot of ordinances that people think of blight. So the piling up of construction materials, a house that is not consistent with the property maintenance code, meaning it's not weatherproof, those are things that are actually defined as blight. Junk vehicles, again, the junk vehicle is not in the blight ordinance per se, but all those ordinances are what people commonly refer to as blight. So when people say how do you determine something's blight? Isn't that subjective? I would argue that it's not really that subjective.
It's like
It's pretty well defined.
category. Blight is more of a category to
Correct.
use all these different ordinances.
You know,
So-
if someone doesn't have a handrail on their porch that's not painted, I think you'd have a hard time saying that's blight. Is it ugly? Possibly. Is it blight? I don't think you can win that in court. So I think that those expectations need to be established there. If someone has coffee cups hanging from their tree in their yard, is that a nuisance? I don't think so. If they blow off and go to the neighbor's yard, now does it become a nuisance? Okay, now you're impacting someone else's property. I think that's a better argument. Just like the flag situation. If I've got a, cheap glass is a pain in the butt flag in my yard and somebody's offended by it, well, it's not offensive. Now, how does that impact somebody else? Well, if the flag is going on somebody else's property or it's obstructing the view from traffic, now it becomes a nuisance. You see the difference there? So,
And then it could be categorized under blight after that, if it became excessive or.
sure. And this could address a lot of things. I mean, if you had something hanging over a sidewalk and people have a hard time getting through or hitting their head on it, that could be a public nuisance because, obstructs or renders dangerous any street, alley, highway, or stream. So that again, take the scenario and see if it fits into the language here. So those are the types of things we're looking for. I think the city is pursuing a residence under this ordinance, I believe, for public nuisance for a suspected, I would argue, a known drug house in town, so.
Speaking of sidewalks, I mean, is that covered under this though? 'Cause
What do you
if
mean
it-
sidewalks?
You said if something's obstructing you, like in a walkway,
Could be.
that could be a nuisance, but it doesn't say sidewalks or pathways, it just says streets.
I'd argue the same thing.
Okay.
Street, alley, highway, stream, I mean, or any way renders the public insecure in life or property.
Okay,
I
so
think
that
you
would
could-
cover it. Yeah. Sorry, that was a tangent, but did that kind of?
And again,
It's very vague. Like, I feel like that whole sentence is just, or whatever is declared to be a nuisance.
well, you can't write an ordinance for every scenario, right? You have to have some type of,
Yeah, that's.
a little bit of vagueness to it. So, does this apply to a drug house? Does it apply to obstructing a sidewalk? Does it apply to someone blocking a street? I mean, otherwise you would end up with 1,000 different ordinances. But are you looking at more specificity? What part?
Okay, well, so I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit. So what confuses me is, on the last page,
Okay.
section C, it says, if the owner of such premises shall refuse or neglect to pay such cost, a lien shall be set against the premises and collected the same as other taxes or assessments are collected within the city. So why are we collecting on putting it on the taxes for a nuisance, but we're not doing that for blight?
That's a great question. That's a great question.
So that's why
That's
I'm
not one for
confused.
this, that's not one for me to answer or this board, that's a question that I can, ask the city attorney, because we already have that established in one ordinance, is that what I'm?
Yes, that's why I was confused on why there's a blight
So-
and a nuisance.
well, I think you
Why
bring
can't
up
we
a-
combine the two?
You bring up a good point, because it says, if the owner of such premises shall refuse or neglect to pay such cost, okay, a lien shall be set against the premises and collected the same as other taxes or assessments are collected within the city. I feel like those are two different concepts there, tax assessment and lien. So I think that's a question probably to get answered.
Okay.
That's a good catch. Because I mean, from the explanation that we were just talking about for blight, you know, being the category, and then all of these ordinances being under that, you'd think that you would be able
Yeah,
to.
I'm just confused on why there's two separate ordinances when we could combine them.
This could be a part of the blight.
Because our blight ordinance is ridiculous. It's so,
Well, blight ordinance deals with buildings and structures, and it's based on the building maintenance code.
right, but couldn't you have a section, because some of them are a nuisance, couldn't you have a section under here that deals with just the building?
Or put the nuisance.
Because technically, the rest of the stuff that is blight is a nuisance, and then you could have a section under here
And be
that deals with
specific.
just buildings. So then you
Okay.
can get, you don't, we're making it way more complicated than it needs to be, and I don't understand.
By going in different
Yeah,
paths.
Couldn't we
That's-
make one up and then submit it?
I'm pretty sure we can.
Make one, what do you
You
mean?
know, make a new ordinance as a suggestion to see how they would review it?
Yeah, you could. I-
Up and make it and combine it to one.
Let's get to the blight ordinance and see how they compare, but
Maybe
what
it
I'm
makes
hearing-
more sense to kind of, in the next meeting, go over this one with the anti-blight ordinance together, so we can kind of see how they.
But what I'm hearing is the feedback is that, you know, if you don't remedy this nuisance in the city, or employees of the city have to, then they're gonna recover their cost via a lien or assessment, and so that's the you know, that was the question that the mayor had in section 3 there.
Okay. Anything else on this one?
I don't have anything, no.
Okay. Right, chapter 674. This one's big. So I guess before moving on, so is that an agreement? We want to look at this one with the anti-blight one kind of together? and
Yes.
Do we want to have George here for that, maybe?
I think we could just do it and then submit it.
Well, I think this group is making a recommendation to, I would imagine, the ordinance committee. But no ordinance is gonna move forward without legal review. But I think probably the best step is this, I mean, since we have an active ordinance committee, is take our recommendations to the ordinance committee, and then it's eventually gonna go in front of council, but, unless anyone feels differently, but now that we have an ordinance committee that is specifically working on these things, maybe that's something we do.
So it'd make more sense for us to go to the ordinance committee rather than us go to council?
Well, two of us are sitting here. So.
Yeah, what they're gonna do is they're gonna send it to the ordinance committee. I shouldn't speak on behalf of them, but if you say, council, we think you should make changes to this ordinance, okay, let's give it to the ordinance committee for, I would think, or they'd say, well, staff make the changes and bring it back to us, so it depends on which, I'll let the chair or vice chair, steer the boat there.
So bring it to the ordinance committee?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm the vice chair, and
Yeah.
sorry, I missed that one.
All right, 674.
Yep. All right, so I have a question on the, or not a question, I guess. I think we should post something on social media since fall's approaching about the open burning thing. I know I drove around town last year and had to talk to the fire chief a couple times about, you know, burn barrels and, you know, burning your leaves in your yard and whatnot, and none of that is allowed. So I think we can post this on social media.
Should we coordinate with the fire department on that, so the messaging can go out with them as well?
Probably a good idea. Then the rest of this kind of talks about burning junk and whatnot, which
You can't have a burn barrel on Manistee, right?
I do not think so.
Or you can have
No.
a pit.
And we have regulations on what type of qualifying fire pit you can use and how far it needs to be from the residence.
Should that be like referenced in here somehow? That policy
Reference where?
into this ordinance I mean, unless it's in a different ordinance, maybe.
You mean the location?
Yeah, like location and, I don't know, cause this is talking about safety and health.
Uh-oh. No, it's not. We have a document that we utilize, I have to find it, that we publicize. If you think that that's gonna be a concern, then we can put it out, usually put it out in the spring, but burning more in the summer than anything else.
I just.
I don't know if
think
you
it'd be a
referenced
little
that, I
bit-
don't know if you referenced that in the ordinance. Let's see what the ordinance says here. So specifically pertaining to 674-01 open burning, is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, there's no distances. I know, I've heard that too. You gotta be X feet away from houses and whatnot. If that's not in an ordinance, then how does the public
Causally
find that, I
burned
guess,
outside
without
dwelling,
calling the fire chief?
no, no person shall burn cause.
If you can't find it, maybe that's, could be another recommendation.
Any solid waste materials, including building materials, junk, refuse, or miscellaneous debris. So this is basically, you can't burn things outside. I think this is different than the enclosed fire pit section, but we can definitely have that evaluated to make sure it's consistent. To me, reading this is you can't burn your leaves, you can't burn things to get rid of it, like construction materials when you're having on a construction site. Nothing in this section shall be interpreted to limit barbecues, cooking fires, other similar fires suitably contained on private property and established stoves or fixtures on public property. So that kind of separates the two there. This is burning of lawn clippings and building materials is the way I read this. And then this section D says, hey, this doesn't stop you from burning, having a barbecue or burning things in the closed approved container, which the city has standards for. That's the way I read that.
What is the process for that? Like, if you wanted to put a new fire pit in, what would someone do? Would they
I'd recommend they contact the city and either get a document that shows the regulations or have the fire department come over and talk to you
Okay.
about it. That's my recommendation anyways.
Okay.
I believe the fire pits in the city, if I'm going off of my memory, have a size requirement and a distance requirement, and I believe they have to have a cover. Yeah, anyways.
Well, don't you ever have a certain distance from a house
Mm-hmm.
to be able to burn?
Yes.
So the smoke doesn't go into your.
Not able to find this very quickly, so that doesn't mean.
Well, I'm looking at the documents on our website, yeah.
We should probably, I'll reach out to Chief Herndon and see if he has the document or whatever to where we can look at it.
He's probably gonna call me to find it, but yeah, I can send you the document if you'd like today.
Oh, I just thought you didn't know.
It was established by the public safety director a few years ago. I'm sure there's a better place to find it on our website. I just happen to try to find things quickly like this.
Okay.
So I can send that
We can
document.
circle.
Are you suggesting that, I mean, it references in our ordinance approved. Are you recommending a change at all, or?
I was just recommending if that was just a document that wasn't in an ordinance, that somehow we get it incorporated in an ordinance. It just
Okay.
seems like the right way to do it, but if it is in a different ordinance and we're just not seeing it, that's.
I don't know if it's in a different ordinance than a city policy, so I can look to see if it's actually codified in an ordinance.
Okay,
I can get that question answered.
sounds good, thank you. O2, any comments?
No, I don't.
O3? O4. O5. And O6. My comment on O6 is I don't know if I've ever seen that happen. I see the dumpsters, the big 10-yard dumpsters on the street, and I don't think.
We
I've ever
require them to. Unfortunately,
Really?
it's one of those things that's so nuanced, it's hard to enforce. When they contact the police department, we advise them they need to be lit at night. Did you want to go back up at 67405? It talks about, weeds, whatever, or any other dumpster container thereof. I think it talks about obstruction of streets, alleys, and sidewalks. So sometimes when we have, except for a sidewalk obstruction, we utilize this. If someone is doing something or placing something specifically on a sidewalk to obstruct it, we utilize this sometimes. For example, downtown, when people obstruct the sidewalk downtown with whatever, this is what we use to educate them, and we don't usually have much pushback there, but it's more of an educational thing. And when they contact our police department for the dumpster, we ask that they have them lit at night.
Have you ever been through, having to enforce that? I know sometimes they
I
actually.
doubt it. It's so nuanced. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
I know a lot of times they do end up under like the street lights and whatnot, so that probably satisfies it, but I didn't know if there's any safety cases that they didn't have that lit, but. All right, moving on to 07. I don't really remember the full extent of that council meeting where we were talking about the EDA district for the snow removal, but doesn't this conflict with that now?
You're correct. But I don't know. This is something in the purview of the NRBC, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you guys want to tackle snow removal.
These are the ordinances that Mary told us that.
Well, once again, I think it's ridiculous that we have a sidewalk and riverwalk ordinance, and then we have this in the
Safety.
safety and sanitation health ordinance, like, why do we keep repeating ourselves? Like, how old is this stuff?
Well, it says in the top right-hand corner, it was reformatted in 2011. But you look at some of these, the origins of these are much, for example, looking at the first time this was passed, 67403, well, it was passed originally in 1953.
Yeah, because section 10, no person engaged in wholesaling or retailing of coal in or near a residential area. Really? I haven't seen people unloading coal at their house, ever. Like, why is this
Are
in
you
here?
suggesting you don't have a coal burning stove at your house? Is that what you're suggesting?
Really?
So what I'm hearing is there could be some,
I think this is so ridiculous.
there could be some updating is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same into railroad cars, trucks, unless the coal is dampened sufficiently to prevent coal dust from being blown. I mean, come on.
So maybe it makes sense to recommend that we basically chop some of this out and, make sure it's covered in the specific ordinance.
Well, it just doesn't make sense to me that we have the sidewalk removal, or sidewalk removal from the business district and residential property, in this ordinance when we have a separate ordinance for sidewalks and river walks.
Yeah. Yeah, that would,
You think it's a smoother, cleaner read if, here's all the ordinances pertaining to a sidewalk, obstructing them, clearing snow, you should have to be smoother, more organized.
Making it way more complicated than it needs to be, like,
yeah, if this specific section that is right here covering the central business district, for example, is not in the sidewalk ordinance, you know, someone's gonna look for the sidewalk ordinance for that, and they're gonna be like, I have no idea what
yeah,
that is.
because who would, if you're looking up sidewalks, you would look in the sidewalk ordinance. You wouldn't say, well, let me just go look in safety and sanitation and health and see if it
Right.
may be in there. That doesn't make sense to me.
That's a good recommendation, we can recommend that for sure. 1953, it said, that's crazy.
Well, they get reviewed and updated, and to be honest with you, again, I would suspect that there hasn't been a huge overhaul of these because it's extremely labor intensive, so maybe what I'm hearing is that there's, I mean, it's, you know, who does it, and I know the process to change the ordinance is 2 separate readings, so it would be quite an overhaul, but maybe if we have an active ordinance committee and abundance of time, we can tackle some of these things, but it sounds like what I'm hearing is it could be a little better organized, to be clear. So for your point, Mayor, it's 1024 is our sidewalks and river walk.
Yes.
Yet we don't see anything about snow removal, and it seems like it would be a nice place to put anything related to sidewalks. Don't block them,
Like-
get the snow off them, sure.
If you click on that again, I think I saw it was cross-reference, right?
What's that?
Yeah, in this
1024.
one.
Yeah, is that what this is, 103?
Why are we doing
1024.
Well, this is a totally different one. 103.4, that's not the same ordinance. What's 103?
But if they already have an ordinance committee, don't they go through
This one does.
to maintain these? I mean,
Well, it's a pretty new.
no, they don't.
Well, this was amended March of 2019. I don't know where it was amended, but, and maybe these are some questions that our city attorney can answer to give some clarity. But I understand your point. But I don't think the NRBC wants to get in the details of snow removal.
No, I think it's just.
Well, no, but I would definitely recommend that the ordinance committee looks at these two and just move them over to sidewalks and river walk. Like, why are they in here? The same as the dust and coal, like that could be removed. And then we've got, oh God, Lord, storage of building materials, accumulation of junk, trash, rubbish, or refuse. Isn't that the same as unsanitary conditions, as blight, as public nuisance, like?
What section was, oh, that's 11.
So are we just gonna make a recommendation to the ordinance committee to review these, or are we going to say these are?
Yeah, review which ones we want, like.
Well, what I'm hearing about, I think I hear the mayor is like, okay, if we have an ordinance on blight, it should include
Right.
blighted structures, junk vehicles, storing stuff on your property, everything that we have for a number of years referred to as blight. And so we can get a legal opinion as to why they're separate. I suspect they're probably separate because they've always been separate. I don't know, I suspect that.
Yes, this whole chapter is stupid. I mean, it's already, I don't understand why it's even in here, because half of the stuff either falls under sidewalks or
Yeah, the sanitation
dangerous,
stuff should
unsightly,
be.
and unsanitary conditions, or it falls under blight and nuisance. Like, it's just, that's why nobody takes anything seriously, because everything is repeated in 4 different chapters, and you can just pick which one you want to pertain to. That's why everything's ass backwards, sorry.
I think,
So we just need to make a recommendation for them to review these 3, correct?
Yes.
And ask them
Well-
for change.
Well, you want to get the anti-blight statute.
We didn't have anything on the. which
yeah,
one?
I think for right now, the 674,
Okay.
comparing it to the sidewalks
Okay.
and, what was the other thing that we said?
So do we have to be specific and write it all down for them, or we're just gonna tell them to review it?
Well, Jim and I are both on the committee, so.
This is probably what's gonna happen, is I would recommend that you say, hey, we're looking, just give them ideas. So we think some of this stuff should be condensed to add for a more streamlined approach to reading it and enforcing it. They probably would, the ordinance committee would ask staff to come up with specific language. The specific language has to come from our city attorney.
Right.
As to how to have that happen. But what I'm hearing here today is, listen, if we have something, for example, sidewalk, we should have an ordinance that pertains to our sidewalks, whether they be snow covered, blocked, repaired. It's just easier so people can go to the sidewalk ordinance, learn everything related to the sidewalk.
Right.
Or the blight ordinance, everything related to blight, meaning junk vehicles, storage of stuff, broke down, houses, and then, yeah, I think that's what I'm hearing, so.
Absolutely.
I don't think we're necessarily at this point getting nuance to a language change. It's more of a reorganization
Yeah, moving some
for
things.
better understanding.
But what I'm saying is we don't have to do anything here as a commission.
No.
You're on board.
Yes.
You're just gonna take care of it, is what I'm getting at. Okay.
And I think it's helpful that we're going through all of them to help the committee, because
That's what we're doing. Gotcha.
it sounded like we didn't have any comments on that first one really, so.
So again here, Mayor, talking about the penalty, it shall be lawful for an officer or employee to enter upon any such land use for the storage of building materials. Basically, clean it up at the owner's expense. A schedule of costs shall be set by resolution, city council, be revised from time to time as conditions may warrant. If the owner such refuses to neglect to pay the fee, a lien shall be set and collected the same as other taxes or assessments are collected.
Like,
Now, I want to be clear here, yeah, right, well, we got a legal opinion on that, right? So,
but we can collect everything on taxes but blight. That does not make sense to me. Everything in here we can do on an assessment or taxes but blight. Why is that? That makes no sense.
I think it's the opinion of the city attorney that he prefers that method rather than tax abatement. So I think that's probably a question for him to come here and answer, but that's the conversation I had with him last year, 2 years ago. I was geared more towards, if we have to use taxpayer money to remedy blight, I would like to see that set so that we can recover those costs, so there's some sustainability there. So we don't just pay taxpayer money to tear a house down, and we never see that because it's on a lien, there's 3 other liens ahead of us, and it's just, I think we should try to come up with strategies that make those monies more sustainable. Take taxpayer money and try to make it work harder and go further. Than just paying $20,000 to tear a house down, we're never gonna see that money again. That money comes out of our budget, and so those are the conversations we had. Maybe we'll continue to have those conversations. I can certainly invite the city attorney to the next meeting. We can have a list of questions probably organized for him, it'll be easier, so we can be a little more structured, and so. I don't know who is gonna be at the next meeting, I don't know, but we can certainly approach those.
Seems like a good time to do
Or
it.
or myself and the city manager can have that conversation on behalf of the NRBC with our city attorney about the thoughts that, we think that we should have, well, it's similar to the DPW comes and cuts your grass.
Right, but
It
what
goes
I'm
to
saying
taxes.
is some of these are rentals. So if you're throwing that charge on the landlord's taxes, he's gonna make sure that his property is cleaned up, like the outside, like he's sending notices or he's cleaning up the property for his renters. What bothers me is you can't put that bill on their taxes, but God forbid you have coal dust running around the neighborhood from loading and unloading trucks, we can put that on your taxes.
And something to keep in mind too on this is if city workers come on your property to remedy it. So I don't know that we would have DPW workers going on private property and taking trash away. I don't know, that's a very,
NRBC though, we're not employees, but could that be?
we wouldn't have that either. We wouldn't have you doing that either. So that's maybe, I'm trying to understand the argument, maybe that's why there's an argument where if the city does it, that could go on your taxes versus we have to contract it out, again. But let's have the city attorney render an opinion on that so we can know moving forward.
All right. Um, After things get maybe shuffled around, I also thought maybe by the time we get to the sidewalk ordinance, we might want to start. I mean, by the time it gets to city council, it might, stir up some questions and comments anyway from the public, but I thought maybe it would be a good time to post about some of the specific duties of the owners about the sidewalks when we get to that point.
Okay.
And not right now, you know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah, I'm still on safety and sanitation.
I am too. It's on the sidewalk section
Because-
of sanitation.
Because 674.11, number B, storage of accumulation, junk, trash, rubbish of any kind, except domestic, what does that mean?
It's a great question.
But once again, it goes back to, in a manner not to create a public nuisance, shall be permitted for a period of time not to exceed 7 days. What?
And then it defines what the term junk is. So machinery, parts of machinery or motor vehicles, boat hulls, unused stoves, which is very specific, and other appliances, remnants of wood, metal, other materials, or other cast-off material of any kind stored in the open, whether or not the same could be put to any reasonable use. So they're defining what junk is, and that, so when you go to court and people will argue this, that's not junk. You say, yeah, it is. You need to have a definition of junk. So that's how I understand that.
But you're allowed to leave it for 7 days.
Yeah, that doesn't make
Mm-hmm.
sense. But that's the same thing as the junk vehicle though.
This whole thing is stupid.
Well,
I just can't.
let's think about scenarios where that would be acceptable. So if you're tearing your roof off your house, people aren't getting those shingles out of your yard in 24 hours, so that would allow for something like that. Or if you're working on your vehicle and you're stripping out a car, hey, I've only got 2 days to do it. So I think those types of scenarios, if I'm trying to understand the ordinance or read into it, you have 7 days to remove these different things. If your car breaks down, you try to fix it, well, you got a week to fix it, otherwise you gotta get out of here. Those are types of scenarios that I see in my mind why you would need 7 days and not say immediately.
I completely understand what you're saying, but too many papers here.
It's in a weird,
Whole chapter is redundant because it's already in. Didn't we just go over one with cars and stuff like that?
Nuisances.
Yes, so what, I don't understand. This whole thing is just repeating what's already in some of these ordinances. Like, that's why it's confusing to people, because if they're just looking at this with just a little snippet, and then they've gotta go, okay, well, now I gotta cross-reference this, and then I gotta take this and cross-reference it with this, why are we making it so difficult? That's what
Well, and it makes it not only difficult for the property owner, but for the city to enforce this stuff, I'm sure, right? No?
no, city attorney's job to enforce it. But I think it's confusing the way it is. I mean, it's,
But it's
No.
difficult to understand it is what I'm saying. Like, it'd be easier for everyone, I think, to be able to go one.
it's difficult to find.
Yeah.
Because a section is this one, and a section is this one, so you can't have junk vehicles here, but then you go to unsafe conditions, which is talking about, washers and dryers and other things, so yeah, so, to be smooth, I think is what the mayor said. If you have something about blight, here's blight, property maintenance code for houses, junk in your car, just lay it out.
Yeah.
yes, get rid of
And
this
get-
one.
And so my guess is no one's taking that because I'm going to guess here, is that the volume of work it would require to completely overhaul the ordinances, and maybe that's in order, but
It's worth
I
it.
think it's a good idea.
Hasn't been looked at in 12 years.
and
Or not
snow removal,
changed.
Should be under sidewalks.
Yeah.
but where would snow removal from downtown, where does that go?
It could go under sidewalks, because this says sidewalks and river walks. So
Okay.
why can't it just be
Sidewalks,
simple,
Riverwalk,
like-
downtown.
making this so difficult? Because, this says it, I mean, the sidewalk references, and then you gotta go through and you reference, oh, here we go, the safety and sanitation one, and then you've got to reference, I can't even read
I
this.
think you can put business and residential together and just bullet point it.
Well, it's got sidewalks and riverwalk. I mean, why?
I think on the ordinance committee, you have a big job to do then.
Yes, you do.
And then maintenance code, we haven't even got to that one yet, but why?
Well, the property maintenance code is based on the standard, in Michigan or the nation, I can't remember.
Right, so take whatever language is, because.
That you want in those and
Building
put it in
materials
there.
and stuff, take it out of here and put it in here, so it's
Right.
clear when people pull up the building maintenance code, like, here's your blight, here's your.
Oh, I don't
safety and
disagree
sanitation.
for litigation, because the city attorney is well versed, in this, but for enforcement, sure. We have a junk vehicle, or let's say somebody has a stack of whatever on their property, we do have to figure out, okay, no, that's not part of the blight statute, it's actually part of the open storage statute, and then who does that? Is that a zoning issue, a building, or is that a police issue? Yes, I agree with you.
And it's not, I mean, so what if the city attorney knows this and he's able to, it's not,
User friendly.
yeah, it's not user friendly, so if somebody is like, hey, am I doing this correctly? I'm not gonna go here and look at this and be like, okay, well, now I gotta pull up 18 more chapters and
Yeah.
read different paragraphs to figure out if it's okay. And I think it's okay, but
I feel like an
the
ordinance
city
should
attorney
be-
is saying no, like, not everybody is an attorney, like, it should be just
Simple and easy.
so difficult to read, and the fact that some of us read these all the time and can't figure it out is a problem.
Okay, I have a comment on
Where are we at?
Which number?
on 67407 C. So this is kind of related to sidewalks, but it's in the safety, sanitation, and health.
Okay.
But, so we talk about enforcement for snow removal, and I know that might not be a NRBC thing, but doesn't the city plow, like, or snow blow the sidewalks for the schools? Like, how is that fair, I guess, to enforce? I know this probably doesn't even get enforced, right? There's no tickets being written for people not shoveling their sidewalks.
That's correct.
So, is it even worth having it in here? Is it, I don't know, it occurred to me that if the city's, same thing with replacing some of the sidewalks, and we can, add sidewalk ordinance to one of these too, but, it just doesn't make sense, right? That, what if you live on a school route, then you don't have to maintain your sidewalk?
Let me rephrase that. When you say it's not enforced, typically when we enforce this is when someone plows out their driveway like a business and blocks the sidewalk, then we go talk to them. If Kathy Grabowski is not shoveling the sidewalk in front of her house, I don't know of a case where we've enforced that, and that certainly is inconsistent with my philosophy as police chief, that we, if the expectation is that you expect every resident to shovel the sidewalk in front of their house, otherwise you're gonna get a ticket, you're gonna find situations where people can't physically do it, and now they're being ticketed because they can't physically do it or afford to hire someone. So I think there's some issues with that, but typically, like I said, where we see this is if someone plows out their driveway and blocks the sidewalk and people can't walk through it, that's typically what we see. We use this. We don't go to Kathy Grabowski's house and say you need to shovel the sidewalk in front of your house. That's usually how this is used. But what I'm hearing is well, I don't know if this is really a NRBC thing.
Could be, I just saw it when I was looking through them.
Well, that's been all discussed at the city council, and it's been kind of dropped, as the mayor can tell you, because the DPW wanted everybody to shovel their sidewalks. And the problem is, people go to Florida, old people, how are they gonna shovel it? So it's kind of been dropped, and that's the way it's left.
So it sounds like it doesn't really make sense to have that in
If
an
Kathy
ordinance.
don't shovel,
then.
I'll get after her.
Well, the thing is people that are out of town, I mean, they still have people maintain their lawns and cut their
Right.
grass, so they could do it through the winter time.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Um, and I only have one more question, but, is there, maybe I just don't know, is there an ordinance that addresses alleys?
We read through some of them.
Like for, maintenance, I guess? Like just as similar to sidewalks? Like who maintains the alleys, who?
If you look, let me see here, if you look at the nuisance one, that addressed the alley, but I guess what specifically what scenario are you looking to cover?
Well, I guess we were talking, it's in snow removal in this one, so,
Oh, snow removal for alleys?
yeah, it just doesn't.
I don't know.
It doesn't say either way, whether it's a public thing or a private thing.
Well, I wonder if you could argue that if you don't, well, are you asking whose responsibility it is to shovel alleys? Or plow alleys?
Just since we're bringing up the snow removal in general, maybe that's just a recommendation to the ordinance committee to look at, is it doesn't say either way who is responsible for snow removal in the alley. So maybe that should be just added either way,
Okay.
so. All right,
Well, does anyone in the room know if does the DPW plow alleys? Does anybody know? Okay.
Like a private,
Is it? Okay. Something,
should just say that then, right?
it might be somewhere in the zoning or some other type of ordinance.
Okay.
you gotta cross-reference. Just saying.
I didn't look at the other 6 ordinances. All right, new business, have none, public comment.
But let's, if you don't mind, I think it's important to show, I can do this very well, the different types of ordinances. We're looking at these ordinances, but just to understand the city. And so we have ordinances that pertain to the city charter, we have zoning ordinance. So if you look, just real quick, an overview, we probably should do this first. Administrative code, traffic code, general offenses, business regulation, taxation, streets, utility, public service code, so that might be in there. Planning and zoning, building and housing, fire prevention. So that's why when you start getting a little bit latitude and start talking about snow removal, it's probably a different ordinance. And you go to zoning, which is quite the read.
So maybe-
There's all these different, so we're talking about ordinances that pertain to blight, criminal, general offense ordinances. There are other ordinances that deal with other department services. So I just want to point that out as we started talking about snow removal and different things. Building housing code, fire prevention code, so just as a note.
Yeah, so I think that kind of just hits it home again, why is it in this ordinance, and maybe that's, maybe it should be removed. Snow removal in general from this specific ordinance, if there's already something for that. But,
And we can also ask the city attorney to attend to explain the cross-referencing and indexing, and so we can be a little clearer. That I'm hearing a lot of questions that would probably behoove to have him answer.
go to the order.
I got a question. Why are there, like, is there a reason why we made these up if there's already a general blanket? Like, why do we have these, if there's so many, like there's zoning ordinances, why do we have these chapters in here? Like, why do we have separate?
So for categories of ordinances, so, to answer your question, so if you look here, 606 animals, 650 blight, 654 nuisances for general categories. So if you wanted to, in theory, go, okay, well, I want to look and see is this illegal according to city ordinance? What is it? Well, I think it's probably a nuisance. Let me start by clicking on nuisances. So just to give direction and add some type of organized system in the ordinances. As you pointed out, they probably need an overhaul to make them a little bit more streamlined.
Like if you were planning on hauling coal, you would know to go to the safety, sanitation, and health to find.
Or if you're a business that like Reith Riley who hauls those things and they're in violation, we don't have an ordinance that applies to them. I mean, yeah, there's all kinds of. Does that answer your question or not?
Yes, I'm just confused on why
Maybe.
you have to
more
cross-reference
specific.
so many times. Why is there
I
just
can't-
not a general, this is what it is? Like, I don't understand why it's so confusing to find what you,
Right, so if you just had zoning, you just go into zoning.
see, like this one, I think,
Yeah.
oh, nope, I'm wrong. You gotta cross-reference
Which one's that?
the one you're on right now, the fireworks. You gotta
fireworks?
cross-reference the Michigan Fireworks Safety Act and the Director of Public Safety. Why are we not just putting it in here?
It is. That's telling you this is based off of the Michigan law, that we don't have any latitude. So it's telling you this is referencing the Michigan Fireworks Safety Act, and that's basically a cut and paste of that act.
So if anything, it's this one.
So
actually
it's telling you what the
doesn't
source
have any
material is
ordinances.
for the ordinance.
Okay, that I understand.
Now, Director of Public Safety, I'm guessing that might, if I define who the Director of Public Safety is, which we don't have anymore. But this is telling you the origin material this is based off of.
So are you the Director of Public Safety?
I am not, we don't have a Director of Public Safety, we're not a Public Safety Department, so we have a fire chief and a police chief.
Oh, that.
But all of these aren't like that though, because
No, some are less clean, I would say clean. This is a newer act, that's why this one's newer, so.
also nobody's had time to,
No, it's this one was amended March 2019. I think this act came out right around the same time, I think, maybe a couple of years. So it just hasn't been around as long, that's why it's cleaner looking.
okay.
But like you look at nuisances, we just looked at that one, and you have this right here. And so, I mean, there's some things we haven't talked about, nuisance trees on private, so it sounds like we need an explanation, this group needs an explanation, what does this mean? Why is it in here? And maybe with that explanation, we go, oh, that makes sense, or we might say, I don't like that, right?
Yeah, because they have a whole chapter just on trees.
Right.
Correct. Is it 1026?
Yes.
So it references that here.
So maybe that's just saying that it's, you can go find that rather than it's in both places. All right, I don't have anything else to add. Yeah.
Well, for the murals again, I see that we have to, see the historical committee, correct? I think, per George.
Or why?
They-
Not in a historical district.
Not just for that mural, but I mean murals in general.
Oh, we'd
We
wanna,
wanted to
I
have-
see.
We wanted to start murals, probably the historical committee. I wondered if we should invite them to come and speak to us, to see what they've done and what they've put together. Before we get into this, I reached out to Jess and she hasn't had time to review it yet. But that would be my suggestion, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel even.
Or maybe even going up to one of their meetings to kind of bring it up on the, see what they want to
I'm not
include
even
in the
sure.
murals.
To create murals in the historic district, they probably have regulations, so I think this group would probably ask, what would you ask of the NRBC, or if we were to draft a policy to have a mural in the historic district, is what we're looking for, so it's information gathering.
I think there's another committee out there too that we need to.
That can be done with, I think, between city staff, I mean, is it Teresa Waldo on the historic district, our planning zoning person? I could reach out,
Could you
if
do
you
that?
want, and say, we're thinking about this, what will we need to keep in mind if we had a policy that pertains to murals in the historic district?
And could you?
They might say they don't want them at all, and then we,
They could,
Well, and we could always generate the policy that says anywhere except the historic district to begin with, and then.
now,
So list that back on our agenda for next time, or is that something you can just email us if you speak to?
I think I can email that information out.
Okay, all right.
As
I'll
long as
watch
there's not
for that.
discussion on it, it's just a Q&A. Here's
Yeah.
my question, here's her
Right.
answer.
Yeah, that's all we want. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
And if you want to have it on the agenda to discuss it more, just get with Lucas, say, hey, I want to discuss the chief's conversation more about, that kind of stuff.
Okay, all right, well, I'll watch for that email.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, motion to adjourn.
I'm
I'll make
okay.
a motion.